Settle in now and let the room around you grow quiet. Tonight, we are going to the edge of the land, where the road narrows, the cliffs rise, and the sea moves in darkness below. We are going to a lighthouse after the mainland has fallen silent, a tall stone tower at the end of a forgotten coastal road, where one warm room waits above the waves, and the wind keeps most things away. Before we begin, if you enjoy quiet sleep stories like this, you can subscribe for more calm journeys, peaceful survival stories, and relaxing bedtime narration. And if you happen to come back in the daytime, leave a comment and tell us where you listened from, what time it was for you, and what kind of story you would like to hear next. For now, there is nothing you need to do. Just get comfortable, let the room around you grow quiet, and allow the story to begin. The first thing you learned after the sirens stopped was that roads are promises people make to themselves. A road says there will be somewhere to go. It says the bridge will hold, the town ahead will answer, the fuel station will open, the signs will still mean something, and if you keep moving, the world will arrange itself into arrival. But after the mainland went quiet, roads changed. The big roads filled first. Highways locked themselves with cars, buses, delivery trucks, ambulances, and people who had believed that distance alone could save them. Then the smaller roads filled with those who tried to avoid the highways. Then the lanes and service roads became useful only to people who moved slowly, quietly, and without expecting help from anyone. You had left the town 3 nights after the power failed, not because you wanted to leave. Want had very little to do with it by then. The apartment above the bakery had held for a while. The back stairs were easy to block. The roof gave you a view of the harbor road. You had water in plastic bins, 2 bags of rice, a box of candles, and enough silence to believe you might wait it out. Then the fire started below the old market. It burned for 2 days. The smoke traveled through the alleys, through broken windows, through ventilation shafts and stairwells. It made the town taste bitter. It brought movement into streets that had been empty. Shapes came toward the crackle and glow. They stood in smoke without understanding it. They pressed against doors because doors were vertical things that resisted them. They followed sounds until sounds ended, then waited for more. On the 3rd night, the wind shifted toward your building. That was when the apartment stopped being shelter. Shelter is not where you wish you could remain. Shelter is where the next hour can still be managed. You packed what could be carried: 2 bottles of water, matches, a knife, a flashlight, a coil of cord, a small first aid kit, a tin of sardines, a packet of crackers, a weatherproof jacket, and the old coastal map you had taken from the ferry office months before. Back when maps were still souvenirs and not instructions for staying alive. You did not go inland. Inland meant roads, villages, farm gates, service stations, and people moving through the same narrow places. Inland meant the broken radio towers and the evacuation routes that had become traps. Inland meant the sound of engines that no longer moved, horns that no one shut off, and intersections where the infected drifted in circles beneath dead traffic lights. You went toward the sea, not because the sea was kind. The sea had never been kind, but the sea was honest. It blocked one direction completely. It carried sound away. It gave rain, fog, wind, salt, fish, storms, and distance. And at the end of the western coastal road, beyond the last village, and beyond the cliff path, there was a lighthouse. You knew it from childhood. Not well. You had only visited twice. Once as a child, holding your father's hand on the path while gulls cried overhead. Once as an adult, years later, on a bright day when tourists came to photograph the White Tower and buy postcards in the keeper's cottage. But you remembered the shape of it, the thick lower door, the spiral stairs, the lantern room, the rain tanks, the small keeper's house pressed low against the wind, the old stone wall around the yard. A lighthouse was not made to be comfortable. It was made to remain. That was enough reason. By dawn, the town had fallen behind you. Smoke sat over the roofs. No sirens rose from it anymore. The harbor cranes stood black against the gray sky. A ferry had drifted sideways against the pier, its ramp hanging open, moving slightly with each wave. You did not stop. You followed the coast road west, moving between hedges and stone walls, listening before each bend. The road narrowed after the last houses. Grass grew through cracks in the asphalt. The sea appeared and disappeared beyond the cliffs, dull silver under low cloud. Rain came in soft bands, not heavy, but constant enough to blur distance. Once, near a lay-by, you found an abandoned car with the driver's door open and a suitcase spilled into the road. You did not search it. Some things pull the mind backward. You needed forward. The lighthouse appeared in the afternoon. At first, it was only a pale vertical shape through fog. Then, the tower separated from the sky. White stone darkened by rain, black lantern room, narrow windows, railing at the top, keeper's cottage low beside it, and the sea behind everything, lifting and falling against the rocks. No light turned in the lantern. No smoke rose from the cottage chimney. No voices came from the yard. The gate in the stone wall stood half open and moved in the wind. That was the first problem. Not food, not water, not fear. A gate that moves in wind can call anything that listens. You stopped behind the last bend and watched the place for a long time. The fog moved around the tower. Rain ran down your face. The sea made a constant low sound below the cliffs. Nothing crossed the yard. Nothing stood in the cottage window. The gate knocked once against stone, then again, softly. You waited for the next gust, moved with it, and crossed the open road. The gate touched stone just as you reached it. You caught it with one hand. The metal was cold, wet, and rusted under your fingers. You did not close it fully. A closed gate where an open gate had been could tell a watcher that someone had arrived. Instead, you tied it loosely with cord so it still looked careless, but could no longer knock. The first rule belonged to the gate. Make the edge quiet before making the inside strong. Then you entered the lighthouse yard. The sea breathed below the cliffs. The tower waited. Chapter 1. The lower door. The lighthouse door was heavier than you remembered. It stood at the base of the tower, painted black, with iron hinges and a round handle polished by decades of hands that had come and gone before the world changed. Rain had gathered in the shallow step. Sea wind pressed against your back. The keeper's cottage stood 10 paces away, but you did not go there first. A cottage has windows. A tower has a single lower door. You chose the stronger question. The door was locked. That was good. A locked door does not prove safety, but it proves the place has not surrendered completely. You checked the frame. No fresh splinters. No pry marks. No dark stains near the threshold. No smell rising from inside except old stone, dust, and salt damp. The key was not obvious. It was not under the mat, because there was no mat. Not above the lintel, because the lintel was too high and too exposed. The old tourist sign near the wall had fallen sideways. Its metal bracket rusted through. You searched behind it and found only snails and wet leaves. Then you remembered the keeper's box. Years before, on the tour, the guide had joked that lighthouse keepers trusted weather more than people and hid keys where rain could not sit. You moved to the lee side of the tower, where the wall curved away from the sea wind. There, beneath a loose stone near the old oil hatch, your fingers touched iron. The key was wrapped in wax cloth. You held it for a moment before using it. Keys can feel like permission. They are not. A key only opens a question. The lock resisted, then turned. You opened the door 1 inch and listened. Inside, stillness, not silence. Stone places have their own sounds. A faint drip somewhere above. Wind pressing through cracks. The slow, hollow breath of the tower, but no steps, no shifting body, no voice, no wet scrape on stone. You entered and closed the door behind you. The darkness inside was immediate. Your flashlight moved low across the floor. The entry chamber was circular, with stone walls thick enough to make the storm outside feel far away. A small storage alcove sat to the left. A spiral stair climbed upward along the wall, disappearing into darkness. The air smelled of salt, cold iron, dust, and something old, but not rotten. You did not call out. Calling out belongs to a world where answers can be trusted. You checked the lower chamber first. Alcove, empty oil cans, rope, rusted tools, a cracked bucket, 2 folded tarps stiff with salt, a wooden crate containing glass lamp parts wrapped in newspaper. No food, no body, no bedding. The old electrical panel was dead, its switches labeled in careful black handwriting. Lantern, cottage, pump, exterior, fog signal. The main breaker hung downward. You left it alone. Power if it returned unexpectedly, could be useful. It could also turn the lighthouse into a beacon. The stairs came next. You climbed slowly, one hand on the iron rail. Stone steps curved upward, narrow and worn in the middle by years of boots. Every few turns, a slit window cut the wall, letting in a pale blade of fog. On the second landing, you found a small service room with shelves, 2 empty water jugs, a broom, a tin of old grease, and a folded canvas cot. On the third, a storage niche with blankets sealed in a plastic bag, stiff but dry. The tower was giving little things. Little things matter. At the top, the lantern room waited under gray light. Glass panels circled the space. The old lens stood in the center, dark and still, its curved surfaces catching the stormlight like frozen water. Beyond the glass, the sea opened on 3 sides. Rocks below, waves, white foam, fog. The mainland road curling back along the cliffs. The keeper's cottage roof, the yard, the half-open gate, now quiet. The view was almost too much. A lighthouse gives distance so completely that loneliness can arrive with it. You stood very still and let your breathing slow. From up here, the town was no longer visible. Only a smear of smoke far along the coast, already thinning in rain. The road behind you looked fragile, a dark ribbon above the cliffs. Anything coming along it would be visible long before it reached the yard. That was the gift. The danger was the glass. At night, even a match could travel far. The lantern room was a crown of windows. Beautiful, exposed, dangerous. It would be a lookout by day, not a living space by night. The sleeping place had to be lower, behind stone. You descended 1 level to the service room. It was small, windowed only by 1 narrow slit facing the sea, with shelves, a floor dry enough, and room for the canvas cot. The door was simple but intact. It was not warm. It was not soft. But it was protected by height, stone, and a single stair below. This would be the first room. Not home. The first room. You carried the sealed blankets down from the niche and opened them. They smelled of plastic and old wool. You shook them once and laid them across the cot. The storage alcove became a supply corner. Your pack went beside the door. Water bottles on the lowest shelf. Knife within reach. Flashlight wrapped in cloth so it would not roll. Rope coiled beneath the cot. 1 tarp folded near the stair in case the lower door needed reinforcement. Then the lower door. You descended again and studied it from inside. The lock worked. The old bar brackets were still there, but the bar itself was missing. You found a length of iron pipe in the alcove, too short for the brackets, but long enough to wedge between handle and floor ring. Not perfect, enough to slow. The hinges were loud. You used grease from the service room and worked them slowly until the door could open without complaining. Make the edge quiet before making the inside strong. The rule held. By evening, the lighthouse had become 3 zones. Lower chamber, entry, barrier, rough storage. Service room, Rest, water, pack, blankets. Lantern room, lookout only. 3 zones were enough for the first night. Trying to inhabit every room too quickly makes a person careless. Outside, rain strengthened. Waves struck the rocks below with a deep, steady pulse. The lighthouse did not move. That was its nature. Wind pushed against it. Rain crossed it. Sea spray climbed and fell away. The tower stood because standing was the work it had been built to do. You sat on the cot in the service room and ate crackers slowly. The room was cold, but not unsafe. The lower door was locked and wedged. The gate was quiet. The stairs gave one approach. The lantern room held the view. The sea blocked half the world. For the first time since leaving town, your back was not against a wall because of fear. It was against stone because stone was there. And stone tonight was enough. Chapter 2. The Keeper's Cottage. The cottage waited until morning. All night you had known it was there. 10 paces from the tower, low against the wind, with dark windows and a chimney leaning slightly toward the sea. It might hold food. It might hold tools. It might hold water records, old fuel, bedding, lamps, maps, or nothing at all. It might also hold the reason the tower had been locked. Morning made it no less uncertain. Fog pressed close to the yard. The sea was present more as sound than view. Gulls cried somewhere above, harsh and alive. The gate line remained quiet. The road beyond the wall showed no movement. The lower door opened without sound now, the greased hinges answering gently. You crossed to the cottage with the flashlight off. Daylight, even fogged, was enough. The cottage door stood unlocked. That was not good or bad, only information. You opened it slowly and waited. Inside, the air smelled of cold ash, damp wood, salt, and old cooking oil. The front room had a table, 2 chairs, a small stove, shelves, and a cupboard. A narrow hall led to a bedroom, washroom, and pantry. The place had been left in order, but quickly. 1 chair pulled back, a mug on the table, a coat still hanging by the door. You did not touch the coat. Some objects hold people too strongly. Room by room, you moved. Front room clear, bedroom clear, washroom dry, taps dead, pantry closed, back storage room locked with a simple latch. The pantry gave the first real relief, not abundance. Abundance was no longer a word to trust, but enough to change the next week. Tins of beans, fish, tomatoes, powdered soup, sealed crackers, oats, salt, tea, 2 jars of jam, half a sack of flour sealed in a bin, 3 bottles of water, and a small crate of potatoes gone soft, but not all spoiled. You stood in front of the shelves for a long time. Hunger can make a person foolish in a room full of food. So you did not celebrate first. You sorted, sealed tins together, dry goods together, questionable potatoes separate, water separate, comfort items visible but not opened, flour left sealed, jam untouched, tea placed near the front, not because it was urgent, but because morale is a kind of ration too. The pantry made the cottage useful. The windows made it dangerous. At night, the cottage could not be the sleeping room unless every window was covered and every crack managed. It sat too low, too many angles, too many panes facing the road. But by day it could be kitchen, workshop, and food storage if handled carefully. The back storage room held tools, a hand pump handle, lantern oil, 2 storm lamps, a box of candles, spare rope, nails, cloth, a bucket of lime wash, a folded fishing net, 3 empty water cans, a coil of hose, a small repair kit for the rain tank, a notebook labeled water and lamp maintenance. The lighthouse began speaking its language. Food in the cottage, water in the tanks, perhaps, height in the tower, tools in the storage room, fire possible but visible, sea below, road behind. A shelter is not one safe room. It is a relationship between parts. You wrote that later, but you understood it in the cottage doorway. The rain tanks stood behind the cottage, half buried in the slope, connected to gutters that ran along the roof edge. One tank had a cracked lid. The other was sealed. You tapped them both. The first sounded low. The second gave a deeper answer. Water, maybe. You opened the sealed tank carefully. Dark water reflected the gray sky. Leaves floated at one edge. No smell of oil. No dead animal. Not safe yet, but usable after filtering and boiling. The cracked-lid tank was worse, with more debris, but still not useless for washing. The cottage had water, but the water had to become a system. You carried one can to the kitchen and marked it tank boil. Another became wash. The 3 bottled waters stayed sealed for emergency. You found cloth for filtering, a large pot, and a stove that used bottled gas. 1 cylinder connected. 1 spare under the counter. Like all fuel, finite. Boil only what becomes drinking water. Wash water is not drinking water. Emergency water remains sealed. Labels matter because thirst lies. The rules came from the room. By midday, the table in the cottage had become the planning table, not the lighthouse service room. That room remained for rest. The cottage table could hold work, because if you had to leave it quickly, the tower still held the night. You drew a new map. Gate, wild, tower lower door, service room, lantern room, cottage, pantry, storage room, rain tanks, cliff path, road bend, old boathouse below, unknown, rocks, sea. The boathouse appeared on the maintenance notebook map, a small rectangle at the bottom of the cliff path. You had not seen it in the fog. It might hold rope, floats, fishing gear, old nets, or nothing but salt and broken wood. A useful discovery at noon can still be tomorrow's work. You did not go down. Instead, you made the cottage quiet. Loose window latch wrapped, back door hinge greased, One broken shutter tied open so wind could not slap it. The gate cord checked. The storage room tools moved off the floor. The pantry door left closed, but not latched, so it would not click at night. Then the lower door of the tower received its true bar. In the cottage storage, you found an old oak beam, likely once used to brace storm shutters. It fit the tower brackets almost perfectly. Heavy, solid, slow to lift. You carried it in sections of effort, resting twice, and set it inside the lower chamber. When the beam dropped into the brackets, the sound was soft and final. The tower had a real door now. Not invincible. Real. That evening, you cooked oats with a little salt and 1 spoon of jam. More sweetness than you had tasted in days. You ate in the cottage before dark, then washed the pot, covered the windows, and carried only what belonged to the night back into the tower. 1 bottle of boiled water, 1 tin of food, 1 blanket, the maintenance notebook, and the key. The cottage remained dark behind you. The tower door closed. The oak beam settled. Upstairs in the service room, you wrote the day's rules. The cottage is for day. The tower is for night. Labels matter because thirst lies. A shelter is a relationship between parts. Do not turn every useful room into a sleeping room. Outside, the fog thinned, and for a moment, the lantern room windows caught the last color of evening. You climbed up to look. The sea spread around the headland, dark blue and restless. The coastal road lay empty. The gate was still. The cottage roof shone wet. Far along the mainland, smoke lifted from the direction of town, but the rain was breaking it apart. You stood in the lantern room without lighting anything. A lighthouse that does not shine can still protect. Tonight, it protected by remaining dark. Chapter 3. The lantern that would not turn. The lantern room became a temptation. By day, it was the most beautiful place in the world. Glass on every side, sea on 3 sides, land on 1. The old lens stood in the center, its thick curved glass splitting gray light into soft fragments. Dust had gathered in the metalwork. Salt blurred the outer panes. The lamp mechanism sat still beneath the lens, gears locked, cables slack, no power running anywhere. By night, the lantern room was danger. Any light there would travel across water, road, fog, and cliff. A single flame might say, "Someone is here. Food is here. Shelter is here. Come toward the tower." But the old mechanism mattered. Not to shine, to understand. You spent the 3rd day studying the lantern, not repairing it. Understanding comes before use. The maintenance notebook explained the rotation motor, lamp housing, emergency hand crank, storm shutters, and the old fog signal. The fog signal especially worried you. If power returned, or if some mechanical fault triggered sound, the lighthouse could announce itself to the whole coast. Sound travels strangely near water. A horn can become a road. You descended to the electrical panel and traced the labels. Lantern, cottage, pump, Exterior, fog signal. The switches were dead, but dead systems sometimes wake badly when power surges return. You pulled the fog signal fuse and placed it in a cloth pouch in the service room. The lantern fuse came next. Then the exterior light fuse. The lighthouse would not speak unless you chose the words. That became a rule. The rest of the day belonged to controlled light. You covered the cottage windows from inside with old canvas and blankets, then tested them at dusk by placing one candle inside and walking the yard. Too much glow through the kitchen frame. You added another layer. Tested again. Better. The pantry window had a hairline leak of amber at the corner. You sealed it with cloth and wax. The tower service room needed less work. The slit window faced the sea, not the road, but even sea-facing light could reflect on fog. You made a small lamp box from a tin, punched with 3 tiny holes facing the floor. It gave enough light to read labels without shining outward. The first version smoked. The second tipped too easily. The third sat inside a bowl weighted with sand and behaved. Do not build the perfect system first. Build the version that teaches you how. You smiled when that sentence arrived, as if some calmer future part of you had spoken it backward through time. In the afternoon, the infected appeared on the road. Only 2. You saw them from the lantern room before they reached the gate bend. Their movement was uneven, slow, pulled perhaps by the memory of roads rather than by any present sound. One wore a raincoat torn at the shoulder. The other dragged one foot. They stopped near the old tourist sign, heads turning toward the sea wind. Neither came to the gate. They drifted along the wall, touched stone, then followed the road downward toward the village path. You did nothing. Doing nothing, when nothing is correct, takes discipline. The gate did not knock. The cottage did not shine. The tower made no sound. The sea covered small movements. After 20 minutes, the road was empty again. The first test had passed because of quiet systems built before the test arrived. That evening, you found the keeper's journal, not in the tower. In the cottage bedroom, beneath a loose board in the wardrobe, wrapped in oilcloth. It was not recent, years old. Most entries were ordinary, whether lamp maintenance, supply deliveries, repairs, loneliness written around but not named. But several pages described storms, so strong the road vanished under water, and the keeper remained alone for 9 days. One line stayed with you. The tower does not remove the storm. It only gives the storm somewhere to pass around. You copied it onto your map. The same was true now. The lighthouse did not remove the changed world. It gave the changed world somewhere to pass around if you kept the doors quiet, the light hidden, the water covered, and the road watched. Night came clear. For the first time since arriving, stars appeared above the sea. You climbed to the lantern room without a lamp. The glass held darkness. The lens stood silent. Below, waves moved white around rocks. Far out, no ships. Along the coast, no headlights. Inland, the old town made no visible flame tonight. The world seemed emptied, but not entirely. A gull slept somewhere below the roofline. The rain tank dripped once. The tower stone radiated the day's cold. Your own breath clouded faintly in the lantern room air. The stars did not care what had happened to people, and their indifference was not cruel. It was vast. It made your fear smaller, not because fear was foolish, but because it was held inside something older. You did not light the lantern. That was the point. A dark lighthouse can still be a lighthouse for the person inside it. You descended before the cold reached your hands. The oak beam crossed the lower door. The service room waited. The small tin lamp glowed toward the floor, hidden and gentle. The maintenance notebook lay beside your bed. The keeper's journal rested under the blanket near your feet, not because it was useful in the immediate sense, but because the voice of someone who had endured storms in the same tower made the room less empty. You wrote the day's rules. The lighthouse will not speak unless I choose the words. A horn can become a road. Doing nothing can be the correct action. The tower does not remove the storm. It gives the storm somewhere to pass around. A dark lighthouse can still protect. Then you closed the notebook. The sea moved below. The light stayed off. The room held. Chapter 4. The boathouse below the cliff. The boathouse waited under the headland like a secret. The sea had not bothered to hide. You saw its roof clearly on the fourth morning, when the fog lifted and sunlight touched the water for the first time since your arrival. A narrow path descended from the yard, following the cliff in switchbacks to a small stone shelf above the rocks. There stood the boathouse, gray wood, low roof, double doors facing a slipway slick with seaweed. It was useful or dangerous or both. Most things are both now. You did not go down immediately. The cliff path had to be read first. From the lantern room, you studied it through old binoculars found in the cottage drawer. Loose stones, one broken rail, a place where runoff had cut across the path. No visible movement, no open door below, no boat in the slip. The sea was rough, but not storming. You chose midday, when light was highest. Down paths are easier than up paths until you need to return tired. So you carried little: rope, knife, flashlight, empty bag, and one bottle of water. You tied a safety line near the upper post, not because you expected to fall, but because expecting nothing is how people fall. The path smelled of wet grass, salt, and stone. Halfway down, the lighthouse vanished above the cliff edge, and the sound of the sea grew large enough to fill your chest. Waves struck rocks below with deep force. Spray lifted and disappeared. The boathouse door remained shut. You opened it from the side, standing away. Inside, darkness, rope, salt, old nets, floats, hooks, a broken oar, 2 crates, a small workbench, and a smell of fish that was old but not rotten. No bodies, no movement, no boat. The boathouse gave what the tower lacked: fishing line, hooks, netting, floats, tarred rope, a metal gaff, a sealed tin of biscuits forgotten in a crate, a rain poncho, a small hand reel, 3 glass jars with lids, a coil of thin chain, a canvas sail stiff with salt. Food possibility, not food. That distinction mattered. You could fish from the rocks, perhaps, but fishing takes time, visibility, and repeated presence. Repeated presence becomes pattern. Pattern becomes risk. Still, the sea was there. Unlike pantry shelves, it did not empty in 1 week. The boathouse also had a danger. Its doors banged inward when wind shifted. You fixed that before taking anything. A banging door below the cliff could call along the coast and up the path. You rapped the latch, wedged the lower edge, and tied the inner handle with rope, so the doors would still look loose but would not speak. Make the edge quiet before making the inside strong. The first rule had traveled from gate to tower to sea. You carried 1 load only: line, hooks, sealed biscuits, jars, poncho, and netting. The chain was useful but heavy. The sail too large. The gaff too awkward. Want argued. The climb answered. Take less than you want so you can return with it. Halfway up, you stopped to rest, and from that lower angle, you saw something the tower had hidden. There was a second path, not official. A fisherman's track, perhaps, cutting from the cliff shelf toward a narrow cove beyond the rocks. It might lead to fresh water runoff, tide pools, or another way up. It might also lead nowhere. You marked it in memory and did not follow it. A useful discovery on a climb is tomorrow's work. Back in the yard, the lighthouse seemed taller than before. Distance changes when you leave safety and return to it. The lower door looked stronger, the cottage smaller, the wall more important, the gate too visible. You carried the boathouse supplies into the cottage and gave them places: fishing gear in the storage room, biscuits in pantry reserve, jars washed and set for rainwater samples, poncho near the door, netting folded for repairs, not yet used. The day's second task became the rain tanks. With the jars and mesh from the boathouse, you improved the filtering system. Gutter water first through mesh, then cloth, then resting jar, then boil. The old version had worked. The new version was easier to repeat when tired. A system that only works when you are rested is not finished. You wrote it on the planning table. Near evening, you tested fishing from the cliff shelf. Not long, 20 minutes, no light, no unnecessary movement. Line only, no clattering gear. The sea pulled at the hook, indifferent. You caught nothing. That was fine. The first attempt taught the motion, the footing, the sound of the reel, the way waves hid small errors and magnified others. The second attempt, days later, might feed you. The first taught you how not to fall. That night, you ate oats and half the tin of biscuits. You allowed yourself tea for the first time, weak but hot. held between both hands in the service room while wind pressed against the tower. The taste was almost gentle enough to hurt. Tea had belonged to mornings before work, rainy afternoons, hotel rooms, conversations, train stations, kitchens where no one wondered if the lower door would hold. Now it belonged to the lighthouse. The old world did not vanish completely. Pieces of it changed jobs. A tourist map became survival route. A keeper's journal became company. A tea tin became courage. A lighthouse became home for now. You climbed once more to the lantern room before sleep. The sea was black. The boathouse below had disappeared into shadow. The road was empty. The gate remained still. Stars came and went behind fast clouds. No ships, no signals, no sirens. You descended and set the oak beam. The room above the waves, weighted with wool blankets, hidden light, boiled water, and the sound of the sea moving around stone. The lighthouse had gained another system. Not just height now. Water, food, tools, fishing, light discipline, road watch, sea path, shelter in layers. It was becoming less a place you had found, and more a place you were learning how to keep. Chapter 5. The Storm Wall. The first true coastal storm arrived at nightfall on the 6th day. You saw it build for hours. The pressure changed first, a heaviness in the ears and chest. Then the gulls vanished inland. The sea darkened before the sky did. Waves grew teeth. Wind pressed the grass flat along the cliff edge. Far out, a line of rain connected cloud to water and moved toward the headland like a curtain being drawn. The lighthouse had been built for storms. You had not, so you prepared while there was light. Cottage windows secured, shutters tied, pantry raised off floor in case water entered, rain tank lids weighted, gate tied in 2 places, boathouse left alone, the path would be too dangerous, tower lower door locked and barred, service room supplies moved away from the outer wall, lantern room checked for leaks, stove ready but unlit, water boiled, food for night carried upstairs, pack set beside cot. Not a repeated checklist. Questions the storm would ask. Can the cottage keep its windows? Can the rain tanks hold clean water? Can the tower door resist wind? Can the service room stay dry? Can the lantern glass take the gusts? Can you avoid going outside once the storm begins? By dusk, the first rain struck, not falling thrown. It hit the tower sideways and rattled against the glass high above. The cottage disappeared after 30 paces. The gate line pulled tight, then held. Waves struck the rocks below hard enough for the impact to tremble faintly through the headland. Inside the tower, sound became everything. Wind around stone, rain on glass, sea on rock, cottage shutters knocking once, then settling. A drip beginning near the 3rd stair. Another drip in the lower chamber. The tower itself, standing inside all of it. The lantern room was the risk. You climbed before the storm became too strong to check it. Wind pressed against the glass, invisible sheets. One pane leaked at the lower edge. Another shook in its frame. You wedged cloth into the shaking seam and tied canvas across the inner rail where spray entered. The old lens stood unmoving in the center, dark and beautiful, while weather tried every side of the room. You did not stay. High glass is for daylight and necessity. Stone is for night. Back in the service room, you lit the small hidden lamp and placed it inside its tin box, holes facing the floor. The light made a soft amber pool no larger than your hands, enough to see the water bottle, the notebook, the edge of the cot. Not enough to escape the tower. The storm worsened. At some point after full dark, something struck the lower door. You froze. Another strike. Not hands. Too heavy, too loose. You descended halfway and listened from the stair. The sound came again, then scraped. Wind-driven debris, perhaps a branch, perhaps a piece of the old tourist sign. The oak beam held. The door did not shift. A frightening sound after dark is tomorrow's work, unless it enters the room. You returned upstairs. The rule saved you from the storm's invitation. Near midnight, the fog signal housing groaned. You had removed the fuse, but metal can still speak in wind. The old horn outside the lantern level caught gusts and made a low almost note, not a full blast, but enough to tighten your chest. If the storm found the right angle, the horn might moan across the coast all night. Sound can become a road. You waited for a lull, climbed to the lantern service hatch, and secured the loose horn cover with rope from inside. It was awkward, cold work, done by touch more than sight. Twice the wind pushed hard enough that you had to lower yourself and breathe. The third knot held. The moan stopped. Back in the service room, your hands shook, not from fear only. Cold effort, adrenaline. The body does not care what name you give the storm. You wrapped your hands around tea heated on the small stove, using the smallest possible flame. No smoke issue here, only fuel. The warmth returned slowly, finger by finger. Outside, the storm continued, but it no longer had a voice that could call the coast. That was enough victory. The long hours after midnight became strangely calm. Not because the storm softened, but because the urgent work ended. The building answered. The door held. The glass held. The horn stayed quiet. The service room remained dry. The sea struck stone and fell back. Rain ran down the tower in rivers. Wind moved around the lighthouse the way water moves around a rock. The keeper's journal line returned to you. The tower does not remove the storm. It gives the storm somewhere to pass around. Tonight, you were inside that sentence. By dawn, the storm had moved east. The world outside looked washed and broken open. Sea foam lay high on the rocks. The gate still stood. One shutter on the cottage had split, but not torn away. The tourist sign had indeed come loose and lay against the lower door, responsible for the night's heavy strikes. Rain tanks overflowed. The boathouse remained, though one door had shifted. You did not rush repairs. Storm mornings make everything look urgent. You made tea first, not because tea mattered more than damage, because the person who repairs after tea makes fewer mistakes than the person who repairs inside panic. Then you began. Tourist sign moved and silenced. Cottage shutter tied until proper repair. Rain tanks checked and covered. Lantern pane dried and marked for sealing. Horn cover inspected. Gate retied. Boathouse noted for later. No road movement. Each answer made the place quieter. By afternoon, the lighthouse felt stronger than before the storm. Not because it had avoided damage, but because you now knew how it failed under pressure. The leaking pane, the horn cover, the low door debris, the shutter, the overflow path from tanks. A shelter becomes real when it has been tested and repaired. You wrote that on the cottage table. That night, you slept with the sea still rough below, but your body trusted the stone more deeply. The lighthouse had taken the storm. So had you. Chapter 6. The road behind the wall. The road brought people on the 9th day. Not many. 3 figures, seen from the lantern room just after noon. They came slowly along the coastal road, staying near the inland side where the wall and hedges offered cover. One carried a pack. One carried something long wrapped in cloth, perhaps a tool, perhaps a weapon. The third walked with both hands visible and turned often to look behind. Living people, that did not make the decision easier. You watched from behind the lens, keeping your body away from the glass. The gate remained tied. The cottage windows were dark. No smoke, no light. From the road, the lighthouse might still look empty. The 3 stopped near the old tourist sign. One pointed at the tower. Another shook their head. The third sat on the road edge, as if exhausted. A loud group would have made the choice for you. A desperate group might have tried the gate. This group did neither. They spoke little. They looked at the road behind them more than at the lighthouse. That meant they understood something of the world. Understanding can be more dangerous than ignorance. It can also be the beginning of trade. Contact is a gate. You did not open it quickly. The lighthouse had a wall, a gate, a road bend, and a blind place near the tourist sign where an object could be left without revealing the tower door. Systems before trust. You wrote a note in large letters on a page from the old visitor book. Do not come to the gate. If you need water, mark the road stone with chalk. No light after dusk. If FOLLOWED, keep moving. You placed the note in a glass jar, wrapped it in cloth, and carried it only as far as the inner side of the wall. Then, using the fishing line and a stone weight, you lowered it over the wall near the sign when the travelers had moved farther down the road. No meeting. A message. The jar sat there all afternoon. At dusk, it was gone. The next morning, A chalk mark appeared on the road stone. One line vertical, one line horizontal. A cross, perhaps, or simply a sign. Beside the stone sat a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, dried seaweed, 3 small tins of food, and a note. Water any hiti. 2 adults, 1 teen. No bites. Moving west but bridge out. Can trade. Will not approach gate. You read it twice from the lantern room through binoculars before retrieving it. The bridge west had collapsed. That mattered. The Lighthouse Road might become a dead end for anyone fleeing. Dead ends create pressure. Pressure creates bad choices. You boiled rain tank water, filled 2 bottles, and left them at the road stone with a reply. Water, bridge west out confirmed. How many moving behind you? Do not return after dusk. Their answer came near noon. Bridge out, many on Main road east. Slow, drawn by town fire. We will shelter in old bus depot if clear. Thank you. The bus depot was 3 miles east, inland from the road. Too far to help directly. Close enough that their information mattered. You did not invite them inside. Kindness without boundaries becomes an open door. Boundaries without kindness become a locked room with no future. The Lighthouse needed both. For 2 more days, the road exchange continued. Water for information, food for batteries, a warning about movement near the village path, a note that the old bridge was impassable, except perhaps on foot at low tide. They signed no names. You did not ask. The Lighthouse remained dark. Then came the hard note. Many coming East Road tonight. We are moving inland. Do not light. No request. Just warning. You prepared before sunset. Gate tied but not locked visibly. Cottage dark. Tower lower door barred. No stove. No lamp in service room unless covered fully. Rain cans muffled. Fog signal secured. Boathouse door tied. Road watched until light failed. The first infected appeared at twilight. They moved along the coastal road in loose clusters, drawn perhaps by the town fire behind them, perhaps by the travelers, perhaps by nothing at all. Some passed the lighthouse without turning. Some touched the wall. One pressed against the gate, enough to tighten the cord, but not open it. The gate did not knock. The edge stayed quiet. You watched from the lantern room until darkness made glass dangerous, then descended to the service room and sat on the floor with the lamp unlit. Movement continued outside for hours. Footsteps on road gravel, a shoulder against stone. Once, the lower gate hinge took weight and gave the smallest muted groan. You held your breath. The sound did not repeat. The sea covered much. Wind covered more. The lighthouse gave nothing back. Near midnight, something struck the cottage door. Not hard, a body drifting into it, perhaps, then scraping along the wall, then away. You did not go down. A frightening sound after dark, is tomorrow's work unless it enters the room. It did not enter. By morning, the road was empty. Mud, disturbed gravel, and one torn sleeve hung from the gate latch. You removed it with a stick, buried it beyond the wall, and retied the cord. The cottage door held. The lower tower door held. No glass broken. No pantry touched. No road figures visible. At the road stone, there was no note. The travelers had gone inland, or they had not. You had no way to know. You left no water that day. Not punishment, discipline. A full bottle by the road with no recipient becomes bait. That evening, you wrote a new rule. Help can travel by system before it travels by trust. Then another. A dead end must look empty. The lighthouse had survived the road because it did not argue with passing danger. It did not shine. It did not call. It did not explain itself. It stood at the end of the world and let the world pass by. Chapter 7. The room that became home. By the third week, the lighthouse no longer felt like a place you had broken into. You still kept the key close. You still checked the road. You still used the cottage by day and tower by night. You still kept light low, water labeled, supplies divided, and the lower door barred after dusk. But your hands had learned the rooms. Your feet knew which stair clicked. Your shoulder knew how to open the cottage door without letting wind catch it. Your fingers could set the lamp box in darkness. The place had learned your shape, and you had learned its moods. Wind from the west brought salt against the lantern glass. Wind from the east carried smells from the road. Fog made the sea quieter, but the road more dangerous. Rain filled the tanks, but loosened the gate cord. Clear nights made the stars bright and the tower colder. Low clouds made small, hidden light safer. The lighthouse was no longer only stone. It was a conversation. The service room became warmer first. Not truly warm. A lighthouse is a hard place to heat, but you improved it. A blanket over the door. Canvas over the slit window at night. The cot moved away from the outer wall. A shelf cleared for water, lamp, notebook, and the keeper's journal. A small hook for the jacket. A place for boots where they would not trip you in darkness. Order is a form of warmth. The cottage kitchen became the day room. You cleaned the stove, sorted the pantry, repaired one chair, and placed the planning map beneath a piece of glass from an old picture frame so damp fingers would not destroy it. The rainwater system improved with mesh, cloth, resting jars, and a boil schedule. The pantry shelves gained labels. The flour bin received bay leaves. The potatoes were sorted. The good ones moved to a dry crate. The bad ones carried far from the house and buried. The yard became quieter. The gate cord changed from temporary to reliable. The tourist sign was removed entirely and stored behind the cottage. Loose stones near the wall were reset. The broken shutter became a windbreak near the rain tanks. Nothing knocked now unless the weather was stronger than ordinary. The boathouse became a second system, not a daily place. Too exposed, too low, but useful. Fishing gear stored, nets repaired, rope sorted, a small emergency jar hidden behind a beam, matches, candle stub, bandage, and one sealed packet of crackers. If you were ever trapped below by weather or injury, the boathouse would not be empty. You caught your first fish on a quiet gray morning. Small, silver, almost too beautiful to eat. You thanked it under your breath, surprised by the old instinct of gratitude. Then you cleaned it at the boathouse, carried it up wrapped in cloth, and cooked it in the cottage with salt and a little oil. The smell filled the kitchen and made the room feel suddenly human. Fresh food changes time. Stored food says you survived yesterday. Fresh food says the world still produces. You wrote that in the margin of the pantry list. The travelers never returned. Once you found a chalk mark on the road stone weeks later, but rain had blurred it beyond meaning. You left nothing. Not because you had stopped caring, but because systems must stay honest. A message that might be old cannot be answered as if it were new. Still, you kept the jar. Some objects become rituals. At night, you read the keeper's journal by hidden lamp. The old keeper had written often about weather, loneliness, lamp maintenance, supply boats, and the strange comfort of routine. One entry described a winter storm that trapped him for 11 days. Another described a ship that passed safely because the light held through fog. Another simply said, made soup, mended sock, sea rough, slept well. You liked that one best. Not dramatic, not heroic, a life continuing. So you wrote your own version beneath the day's notes. Filtered water, mended gate cord, caught small fish, sea rough, slept well perhaps was honest. The lighthouse had not become safe forever. No place had, but it had become a place with mornings, tasks, weather, food, rules, repairs, and one room where your body could begin to believe in sleep again. One clear evening, you climbed to the lantern room after sunset without a light. The sky over the sea held the last blue of day. Stars appeared one by one. The old lens stood beside you, dark and patient. Below, the cottage windows were covered. The gate was still, the road empty, the boathouse hidden in shadow. Far inland, the town no longer glowed. You placed one hand on the lantern railing. A lighthouse exists because darkness is expected. The thought came gently. Not all darkness is failure. Some darkness is simply the condition in which guidance matters. Tonight, the guidance was not for ships. It was for you. The tower did not need to shine outward. It only needed to hold inward. Chapter 8. The last light you did not use. The helicopter came on a cold morning. You heard it before you saw it. A faint mechanical thudding beyond the sea wind. At first, your body refused to believe the sound. Machines belonged to before. Engines belonged to roads, rescue, news footage, airports, hospitals, ferries, normal emergencies with normal endings. But the sound grew. You climbed to the lantern room and scanned the sky. There, a dark shape moving along the coast, far out over water, then angling inland toward the old town. Too far to see markings, too fast to read intention. It passed beyond the headland without slowing. Your hand went to the signal mirror before thought caught up. The mirror sat wrapped in cloth beneath the lantern room shelf. You had kept it for the possibility of rescue. A flash from the lantern room could travel miles. A flash could say alive. It could say here. It could say come. It could also say supplies. Shelter, water, light. You held the wrapped mirror and listened to the helicopter fade. Not every chance is meant to be taken. The sentence hurt, but it was true. The helicopter was too far. You did not know who flew it. You did not know what followed it. You did not know whether a signal would bring rescue, raiders, infected drawn by later search, or nothing at all. The lighthouse had survived by choosing its words carefully. A mirror flash was a loud word. You did not use it. Instead, you watched the helicopter vanish into cloud. For the rest of the morning, the lighthouse felt smaller. That happens after almost hope. A place that was enough yesterday can feel like a prison after a sign from the larger world passes overhead. You moved through tasks without much feeling. Water, pantry, gate, road, rain tank, cottage stove. The systems held, but your mind remained in the sky. So you made tea, not because tea fixes grief, because grief should not hold tools. You sat at the cottage table with the cup between your hands and let the disappointment exist without turning it into action. The keeper's journal lay open beside the map. On a blank line, you wrote, "I did not signal today." Then, after a while, "I am still here." The second sentence mattered more. That afternoon, you repaired the lantern room glass, not for shining, for weather, for integrity, for the discipline of caring for a place, even when it does not become what you wish. The leaking pane from the storm received new sealant made from old putty warmed and worked by hand. You cleaned salt from the lower panels. You tightened one loose bracket. You polished a small section of the lens with cloth until it caught the gray light clearly. The lens was still dark, but it was no longer neglected. There is a difference between unused and abandoned. The lighthouse was unused by the old world. It was not abandoned anymore. Near sunset, you saw movement on the road stone, not infected. A fox, red and thin, stepping carefully along the wall. It paused where the travelers had once left notes, sniffed the empty jar, and moved on. The sight made you laugh once, quietly. The road had carried people, infected, warnings, fear, and now a fox who cared for none of it. The world was broken. The world was also continuing. That night, you climbed again to the lantern room, still without light. The mirror remained wrapped. The old lamp remained off. The sea was calm for once, reflecting a faint break in the clouds. Stars trembled on the water, broken by each swell. You imagined the lighthouse shining, the beam turning over the sea, white light crossing waves, a ship answering from darkness, the old purpose restored. Then you imagined the road below, filling with shapes, drawn by the same beam. Purpose must change when the world changes. A lighthouse that once saved ships, by shining might now save one life, by staying dark. That was not failure. It was adaptation. You descended slowly. In the service room, the hidden lamp gave its tiny downward glow. The cot waited. The water bottle stood on the shelf. The journal lay beside the blanket. The oak beam held the lower door. The cottage slept below the tower. The rain tanks rested full. The sea moved around the headland. You wrote one final rule for the day. Hope is useful only when it does not make the decision for you. Then you slept, not perfectly, but deeply enough. And in the morning, the systems were still there. The lighthouse had not become a rescue station. It had remained shelter. For now, that was the truer gift. Chapter 9. Enough for the night. The quietest days came after the helicopter, not because the world became safer. You knew better than that. The road still needed watching. The water still needed boiling. The cottage still had too many windows. The sea still took what it wanted from the rocks. The infected still moved through distant roads when sound or chance pulled them. People still existed somewhere beyond fog, careful or desperate or both. But inside the lighthouse, urgency softened. The place had become understandable. Morning, lantern room watch, road, sea, weather. Midday, water, food, repairs, cottage work. Afternoon, boathouse if calm, pantry if rain, journal if fog. Evening, darkened cottage, carry night supplies, bar lower door. Night, service room, hidden lamp. No unnecessary movement. A rhythm is not safety, but it gives fear a smaller room to move in. The final repair was the cottage hearth. You had avoided it for weeks because smoke was risk. But cold was coming, and the small stove in the tower could not warm everything. The cottage hearth, if cleaned and used carefully on wet nights with wind off the sea, might provide heat, cooking, drying, and morale. You spent a full day on it. Chimney checked from below. Soot cleared. Bird nest removed. Damper tested. Smoke path watched with a twist of paper, then a handful of dry grass, then nothing more. You walked the road after the test to see if smoke showed from below. It did, faintly, but wind tore it seaward almost immediately. Cottage fire only in rain or sea wind. Small flame, no daylight smoke on clear days. Ash cooled and buried. The first real fire was tiny, barely more than coals, but it changed the cottage from workroom to room. Shadows moved on the covered windows. The kettle warmed. Damp socks dried on a chair. The old table glowed at the edges. For an hour, the world outside could be held at the wall, the gate, the road, the cliff, the sea. You made soup with fish, potatoes, salt, and time found. growing stubbornly near the cottage wall. Fresh thyme at the end of the world. You saved half the soup for morning, because future, you deserved kindness too. After washing the pot, you sat by the hearth and read one more entry from the keeper's journal. Fog all day, lamp steady, no ships, bread low, slept after midnight, dreamed of trees. You wondered about that keeper, alone above the sea, dreaming not of cities or people or escape, but trees. Perhaps every isolated place makes the mind grow a second landscape. Perhaps the body asks for what it does not have. Here, you had sea, stone, wind, and height. Maybe someday you would dream of forests too. That night, before returning to the tower, you stood in the yard. The cottage behind you was dark again. The hearth coals smothered, the gate tied, the road empty. The tower rose above you, pale in moonlit fog. The lantern remained off, and because it remained off, the stars seemed brighter. You listened. Sea below, wind around stone, one drip from the rain tank, a gull shifting in sleep. No road sound. Enough. The word arrived without effort. Enough did not mean forever. It did not mean rescued. It did not mean safe from all possible things. It meant the systems were in place. The night had been prepared for, and the body could stop trying to live tomorrow before tomorrow came. You climbed the tower stairs slowly. At the lower chamber, you set the oak beam. In the service room, you placed the water on the shelf, hung the jacket, folded the map, and lowered the hidden lamp until the room held only a small amber pool. The keeper's journal rested beside your own notebook. The two books looked like they belonged together now. Different storms, same tower. You wrote the day's final entry. Road empty, sea wind, cottage hearth tested, soup made, no light shone, enough for night. Then you closed the notebook. Outside, fog thickened around the glass above. Inside, the tower held its dark. Final descent, the dark lighthouse. Now let the story become softer. There is no new road to watch tonight. No new signal to answer. No new room to search. The lighthouse has done its work for the day, and so have you. The lower door is closed. The oak beam rests in its brackets. The gate is tied softly against the wind. The cottage windows are covered. The hearth is dark and safe. The rain tanks are full and sealed. The pantry shelves stand in quiet order. The boathouse waits below the cliff, its doors tied against the sea wind. The lantern room above remains dark, not abandoned, not useless, simply silent, because silence is what protects it now. There is nothing more to do with those things tonight. Let the mind hear that clearly. Nothing more tonight, not because everything is perfect, because enough has been done, enough water boiled, enough food stored, enough warmth saved, enough light hidden, enough weather understood, enough distance from the road, enough darkness around the tower, enough stone between the room and the world. Breathe in slowly. The tower is still here. Breathe out. The sea is below. Again, breathe in. The room is around you. Breathe out. The day can loosen. If thoughts come, let them arrive like fog against the lantern glass. They do not need to be chased. A thought about the town can remain far down the coast. A thought about the road can stay beyond the tide gate. A thought about the helicopter can pass into cloud. A thought about tomorrow's work can wait on the cottage table beside the map and the maintenance notebook. Tomorrow has places to keep its questions. The bed has only one purpose now: to hold you. Let your shoulders lower into the blanket. Let your hands release the rope, the keys, the water cans, the storm latch, the fishing line, the wrapped mirror. Let the jaw soften. Let the forehead smooth. Let your feet grow warm beneath wool. Your body does not need to patrol the road tonight. The systems are in place. The lighthouse knows its work. The night can pass without being watched every second. Above, the lantern room is dark. But darkness here is not failure. Darkness is care. The old lens waits in the center of the glass room, catching no flame, turning no beam, calling no one from the road. Once, it saved ships by shining. Now, it saves this small life by remaining quiet. Purpose has changed, but purpose remains. Outside, the sea moves around the rocks. Not urgently, not like alarm, just the ancient breathing of water against stone. Wave, break, withdraw. Wave, break, withdraw. The same rhythm that sounded frightening on the first night has become part of the room's silence. The tower does not remove the storm. It gives the storm somewhere to pass around. Tonight, there is no storm. Only wind, fog, and the soft pressure of the sea below. Far along the coast, the town is hidden. No sirens rise from it. No horns. No emergency lights. No loudspeakers repeating broken instructions. The road behind the wall is empty. Or if something moves there, it moves without reaching this room. You are not in the apartment above the bakery with smoke in the vent. You are not on the coast road with the town behind you. You are not at the gate with rain on your hands. You are not in the storm holding rope around the fog horn cover. You are here in the service room of the lighthouse at the end of the world, above the lower door, below the lantern glass, beside the sea, behind stone, held by the dark. The air smells faintly of salt, wool, old wood, and tea. The hidden lamp is almost out, its small amber light pointed toward the floor. The notebook is closed. The keeper's journal rests beside it. Past storms and present storms sharing one shelf. People have waited in this tower before. People have listened to wind here before. People have trusted these walls through long nights and woken to gray morning. Tonight you are one of them. Notice the world. Write down what matters. Prepare gently. Rest when you can. This is the resting part. Let the silence become wide. Not empty silence. Held silence. Stone silence. Sea silence. Blanket silence. the silence of covered windows and labeled water, the silence of a gate that no longer knocks, the silence of a lantern that has chosen not to shine. You do not need to touch any of it. It is there. That is enough. Let the breath slow again. In and out. The night is not asking for strength, only trust enough to sleep for a while. The tower can hold the dark. The walls can hold the weather. The tanks can hold the rain. The pantry can hold tomorrow. The sea can hold its distance. And the bed can hold you. Sleep does not mean forgetting. It means allowing the body to repair what the day has used. It means letting the mind set down the map, the roads, the warnings, the choices, the mirror not used, the light not lit, the storms already past. It means trusting that for these few hours, safe enough is enough. Safe enough is real. A barred lower door, a covered window, a full bottle, a warm blanket, a dark lantern, a quiet gate, a tower that answers wind with stone, a sea that keeps half the world away. Let everything else move farther out. The road can move farther out. The town can move farther out. The smoke, the blocked bridges, the broken broadcasts, the final sirens, all of it can move beyond the headland, beyond the fog, beyond the reach of this bed. There is only the lighthouse now. There is only the quiet room above the waves. There is only the next breath, and then the next, and then the deep, gentle dark. Nothing more from the road tonight. Nothing more from the town. Nothing more to fix. Nothing more to carry. Rest now. The gate is quiet. The water is covered. The lantern is dark. The lighthouse holds, and the sea keeps moving softly below.